I have a problem with a Twitter meme, and that's a really dumb thing to have an issue with because the internet's not real, and especially Twitter isn't real. Um, but I have an issue with it nonetheless. There's this meme that circulates every once in a while, and maybe other people don't get this, and this is revealing my uh, algorithm. But I get this meme that basically says something to the lines of, "Where's my burned out gifted kids?" or whatever. Um, Usually it's pretty derogatory in some way, and not like a towards other people, but like self-derogatory. This idea that I was once this gifted kid, and now my life sucks. There's always like different variations of this. If I was a better YouTuber, or if this really was a YouTube channel I was trying to like make, I would like edit some pictures of that. But I'm not going to. You can go look that up. Make your algorithm suck too. Sorry. Um, but basically, every time I see these uh, every time I see these, I get slightly irritated um, because it's just not true. It's not that it's not a real experience that someone's feeling, but it feels so aggressive in the fact that it like assumes that everyone else is having the same experience, and I'm not the like uniquely qualified to talk about this. I feel like I was at least I have some background enough to kind of express why this frustrates me. But like on a simple level, uh, being gifted has nothing to do with being burnt out. Um, there's plenty of Twitter psychologists who then reply to this meme more seriously than even I would, and say something to the effect of like, well, because they were gifted, they, you know, put this undue stress upon themselves, and then in order to avoid the actual stress and proving themselves wrong or some bullcrap, they is that a baby zombie again? There's two of them, and I'm on fire. Okay, my point is, this is gonna go on for a while. All right, my point is, there's always people trying to psychoanalyze themselves, and they're always trying to make some claim about the reasons why they are the way they are. And I feel like one of the biggest issues I have with this is that they're doing the exact same thing that got them into the position they're in now. Let me explain. They're complaining that they're a burnt out gifted kid that never met their uh, potential. They were told all throughout whatever they were, uh, whatever schooling they received, that they were special, and and now they're not, and they were like that was a lie, basically. Um, and I don't think that experience is necessarily false. They might truly have experienced that to some degree. I don't want to like disrespect that experience. Um, but what I don't like is that it then gets applied to everybody. There's like this assumption that everyone who was a gifted kid was now um, is now this burnt out struggle bus that uh, has to be, is burned out, and it kind of gives like millennial core a little bit with the complaining, and I don't even know what I am considered, so maybe I'm telling on myself with that. But this all gets to this idea that I've struggled with, and it's the idea that hey, you're speaking from my experience, and from my experience tells me that I think you just are disappointed in yourself. And I can say that as someone who experienced it. I'm not saying that because I'm trying to hurt these people who are clearly trying to find a way that to explain their experience and what they're struggling with. Because it seems like there's this story of these people who were said that they were gifted, and then they got older and nothing came of it. that's a sad story, I guess. But I think the difference between those people and myself, and not to make myself sound special, is that these gifted people never grew past the idea that they were gifted. Um, I'm now a teacher, and I teach plenty of students who are probably considered gifted. I don't even think my school actually has a gifted program. There's a lot of discussion in the industry, education industry, about how gifted is really kind of a special needs education more than anything. With the abundance of kids with things like ADHD and other aspects kind of being like more heavily found in the testing groups. But I'm not even going to touch that side. I'm not qualified to talk about it. I understand SPED law to the degree that my job requires it, but like I don't want to speak on that side of the industry that I don't understand. Um, Instead, I figured I'd just kind of express what happened with me and why I think this explains the difference and why I don't ever feel like a burnt out gifted kid, even though I've been burnt and I definitely was a gifted kid. Um, I got into the gifted program when I was probably first or second grade. I think it was first grade. I distinctly remember uh, them taking me to a separate room and showing me these like pictures of like blue and yellow patterns and asking me to make pairs or match them or do whatever I wanted with them basically. And it wasn't until I thought about making this video that I looked up the different types of tests that are taken, and it turns out my memory is correct. But I got into whatever the gifted program was at that time. I think it was called something like primary. Each one of them had a different name. That's gonna be important later. And I got into it, and it was like maybe it was a kindergartner, but I think it has to be first grade, honestly. First grade to I think third. No, it must have been second. So it really was just 1 year. But what I remember about this, I mean, I was young, and really all I cared about was that my friends were there too. We got to go to a separate class during one of our electives. I don't even know which one it was. And we would go do things that were different. It was just more work, to be honest. It wasn't like it was something more intense as far as I can remember. I remember the hungry caterpillar specifically. Again, this is really like I was really young. I don't think there really is a use for a gifted program at that point. Um, but after that, when I moved up to second grade, I had to take another test. I had to take another test, and everyone did. And this test got you into a different program. Uh, it got into the program that was up above because you had to upgrade to move up. I guess it was like a secondary check. Um, and all of my friends took it. We were very, kind of nervous about it, wanted to stay together, and I was the only one that made it. Um, and what that meant was on a day, I don't know what day exactly, but I think it was like Tuesday. I'm gonna say Tuesday for the sake of this story. Tuesdays, I would get on a bus and go to a completely separate location, uh, to another building where other people got bused to, and then I had to select courses like it was like electives and like kind of like college, and then I would take those classes, and it's like a completely separate. I don't know how I got graded on this. I mean, grades don't even really exist in lower school grades, but I did that. Like I had a class on like Lewis and Clark and like their experience. Then we went on a field trip to like a memorial. I had to make like a McDonald's like toy box, like for like commercials. Like it was like a marketing class. Mind you, I was like in third grade, third and fourth grade. This was happening. I, I was in no business to be doing marketing. I don't think for McDonald's. Not that I was literally doing it for McDonald's, but just that idea. Um, But really, what I remember of this as a kid was I was just lonely. Um, I remember eating lunch by myself every Tuesday on this table, and I remember not having my friends. Like I got to do some really cool things. I think I did the egg drop experiment as a third grader, and we had to solve puzzles as a group. A lot of like teamwork stuff that you see people do in like corporate now. I did as like a third grader because that's what it was. And then I moved. I moved away, and I was going into my fifth grade when we moved, and my parents said that I was a gifted kid, so that meant that they wanted to test me, and so I took another test. And this test was done by myself with another person who was just directly asking me questions, and then I had to answer them. And then she pulled me in later to tell me my results. And I don't know if she's supposed to do this or what. Again, this is my experience. Some of these could be wrong based on memories of, memories on memories. But she basically told me that I got in by 1 point. Uh, and that meant that I was taking a bus to another school and I joined a group of people. And I remember the first day I tried to join because they told me, okay, on Tuesday or Thursday, whatever day it was, you're going to go after the first bell, you're going to get up, put your chair up, and then you're going to go with these two other people and they'll take you to the bus. But they didn't tell those other people. So this new kid who has just joined the class about mid-year, a little past mid-year, not exactly mid-year, but um, suddenly gets up and they're like telling me that no, you're not supposed to come with us, and I'm like, no, I actually am. I don't know how to explain this, but I'm supposed to, and they didn't really believe me, but I came, and eventually, I befriended those people. And again, for me, the gifted experience was about friends. I mean, in that class, up until we did chess. We did a lot of chess. I learned how to play chess from that. Um, from that, I'm not good, but I learned. We we practiced making like we had to find a way to solve the water pollutant crisis uh, in Canada, in which that was a experience, and this might be me mixing up memories now at this point, but these are all things that happened. Uh, very odd. Nothing like particularly that made me, better at something. I would argue anything else, and and then with that, I moved up to middle school. I didn't have to take another test for the middle school one. I don't know why. And I had 3 years with the friends that I made in fifth grade. And some of them changed over time. Like they weren't always the same people. They weren't always the same people, but some of them changed, and that was fun. I had a lot of fun with that. I remember at one point though, at one point I think it was probably seventh grade. I had one of my friends who was in the class, and we weren't super close friends, but we're friends by the fact that we're both in the gifted class, um, which is an interesting idea. And he was complaining to me about all the extra work that we had to do in this class. Um, and I was kind of confused by this because to me, the class wasn't, yeah, it was a class, but like I got to do lots of cool stuff, things that I couldn't do in other classes. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because I ended my time in the gifted program with kind of this conclusion that uh, I never really fit in. I kind of, like I said with the beginning, in my on my fifth grade year, I was basically told that I didn't really make the cut, that it was kind of like a fluke. And I don't think she meant it that way at the time, but that's what she said. Um, and so the whole time that I was in these classes, I kind of just always felt gratitude or like grateful for the experience. I truly believed that I was surrounded by people who were smarter than me, which, to be fair, most of them were. And that was a good thing. I learned a lot from those kids that I was friends with. Um, it made me smarter, and I can say this as a teacher now. There's the number one driver of success for these kids is the kids they're around. So many of my smartest kids are only in their smart kid group because they're with the other smart kids. They're really not that much better than others. And this leads me back to the point I want to make about this idea of these burnt out gifted kids. They don't exist. They're not real. These are the kids that when they were told they were gifted, that was it. This was like my friend who was like, this is too much extra work. I'm not saying they weren't grateful. That's all I'm saying. But for some reason, those people connected the idea of gifted to like their personality. And you could argue that being told you're special does that to a young kid who's impressionable, right? You're different, you're special. There's so much media about that. Of course, it's going to impact a kid if that's what they're told. But that's not what the gifted program or those tests. I took three of them after all, and I've looked them up and seen what tests I took now, and they're basically, for lack of a better word, they're aptitude tests. They just tell you, hey, this person is a little bit more skilled. Not, sorry, that's a wrong phrasing. Is a little more likely to be able to develop the skills necessary to achieve in our current school system. And you can even argue that that might be not a good thing. Um, I'm not going to get into school reform right now, but that's all it is. It doesn't say you're smart. And I think somewhere along the line, someone believed or thought that being gifted meant you're smart, and that's just blatantly not true. That's just not what it means at all. Um, and I think I got lucky because I never believed that. That being said, I did have a bit of a complex going into high school because everything was easy. Nothing was truly hard for me at the time. I'd never been challenged, it felt like. And because of this, when I moved again, but this time it was not an easy move, and it required me to now go to not a public school, but a private school that was getting paid for by my father's work because there wasn't any other options. Um, I was suddenly surrounded by people way smart, and the people who were uh, teaching were way smarter than me. The classes were way harder than I had anticipated. Again, these aren't bad things. I don't really consider these bad things. But I was coming from a place where I really didn't have to try to where suddenly I had to try. I remember coming home from my Algebra 2 lesson and I had to do homework. And I would think I was a sophomore. And I opened the textbook and I was trying to do the problems and I couldn't. And I think this is probably one of the first times in my life that I couldn't figure something out by myself. Again, I'm not the smartest person in the whole world. I'm not trying to argue that I am in this moment. But up until this point, I was pretty good at what I did. Uh, Not even in like a super negative way, but I never really had to struggle. And in this moment, I had to struggle. I cried. I cried at my textbook. I'll admit it. I was a sophomore. I didn't know what I was doing. It was too hard. And I eventually had to admit to myself that I shouldn't be in any of these advanced math classes and I should just take the non-honors or non-whatever it was called because that would be better for me. And I would say that this humbled me, but I don't think it just humbled me. I think it set me up for success. But I think I had never connected my intelligence to being gifted. I had never said to myself, "Oh, uh, I missed. Because I am gifted, I am smart." I always thought I was smart because I was smart. I, and I don't think that changed even when I looked at myself in the mirror and said, "No, I'm still a smart kid. I just don't understand this right now. And that's what I think these armchair Twitter psychologists are missing. Is that it was never about being gifted. I'm sorry that at some point in your life, an adult didn't properly prepare you for the realities of life. That's what that tells me. It makes me sad as a teacher because these people who are struggling, who are burnt out, they're struggling because they just had the wrong expectations for their life. They were told they were special, but never told how to achieve it. They didn't realize that, hey, it says I'm special, but that's not what this actually says. It says you have the potential to be special. It has the potential to do something great. And right now, you're not doing it yet. You have to work for it. You have to prove it. You have to sometimes take the easier class because you're not ready for advanced pre-calc. You're just not. And admitting to that is, in some ways, way more important than taking the advanced class and being part of the smarter group or being gifted. I think this comes back to my biggest problem with the gifted, burnt out gifted kid discourse is that they're doing the same thing that got them in this first. They're doing. So let me rephrase that. Holy cow! They're doing the same thing that got them to this point in the first place. They have an issue where they're saying to themselves, "I'm gifted," and they hold on to that until they get older, never do anything with it, and then they're faced with the reality that they're not gifted, they're not special, they're not better than anybody else, and then that shatters their personality. They hide behind the idea that gifted made them special, and they're not. And that's a whole other discussion for another time. But what then they're doing is they're looking at that fact that, oh, I'm not gifted, which, okay, you're not gifted, right? I'm not special. And now that they've seen that, they've now created a new label to hide behind. I'm just a burnt out gifted kid who other people failed. And again, there's the argument that the system did fail these kids. I'm not pushing saying that, oh yeah, education is perfect and they've done everything right. No, there's a lot of issues with education and how they deal with kids of various special needs. What I'm saying is, now that you're an adult and you're struggling with whatever you're struggling with, and I'm sorry that you are, because trust me, I understand that burnout is hard, but you're struggling with this, and your answer is, I'm just going to say I'm special once again. I'm a burnt out gifted kid. I don't have to try. I don't have to fix it. I'm just burnt out. And when I'm not burnt out, eventually I'll be special again. And maybe I'm actually special now because I'm a burnt out gifted kid. To me, this is a shame, honestly. This is a struggle and kind of makes me sad for these people because it's so much better to live life knowing that you're not the smartest person in the whole world. And I don't think these people think that, they don't think they're the smartest person in the whole world because, uh, all the time or even consciously. It's just that's what they're struggling with. And I'm gonna be honest, it's because they've never struggled. And now that they've reached struggles in their life because adulthood is hard, they feel like a failure. In some ways, they are failing. But that's a good thing. If anything, there's nothing I appreciate more than the fact that I had to cry in my Algebra 2 textbook. Because that's what stopped me from being a burnt out gifted kid. But maybe that's me being proud of that? I'm not sure.